Welcome to In Depth for yet another look at what is making mining headlines in the Americas. The Canadian mining sector is humming with merger and acquisition activity. In one of the biggest deals announced so far this year, base metals mining company Lundin Mining and Inmet Mining have agreed to merge. Liz O'Hill joins me from Toronto, Canada to speak about this development. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Martin.
What is the reasoning behind the merger between these two companies?
Well, definitely on the face of it, the two firms fit together very nicely in terms of the assets that they own to begin with. Both of the companies, Lundin and Inmet, they both have base metals production and base metals mines in Europe. And then each one also brings prospects of copper production growth through a big copper project that they own. So Inmet has the Cobre Panama project in Panama, obviously. And then Lundin owns a minority interest in Freeport-McMoRan's Tenke-Fungurume copper and cobalt mine, and that's in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, Freeport, the Tenke mine is already in production, but Freeport and Lundin are expecting a series of expansions that will then grow production over the coming years. So the two companies have agreed on what they call a merger of equals. Each investors in each firm will each exchange their shares for shares in a new company called Centerra Corporation. And the way that they've structured it is that, at least they've tried to, that each company, the investors don't get a premium for their shares. So it really is, as they say, a merger of equals. And that will create a reasonably significant new player in the Canadian copper space. If you add the two market capitalizations together, just at the time of the announcement, it would be worth more than $9 billion, 9 billion Canadian dollars. So it's fairly significant. And really what the companies have said in terms of the strategic rationale for the merger is that they say to compete as a copper producer in the current environment, it's increasingly important to have scale in terms of being a large producer and also that financial muscle. And so that's what they're trying to accomplish by putting the two businesses together.
Do you think the transaction will affect the two companies' respective projects?
Well, no, at least certainly not in a negative way, as far as they're saying. Tenke-Fungurume, there were some questions from analysts about whether the companies planned to actually sell that stake in the project. It has been a bit of a difficult one in terms of a risk for Lundin. There was some questions over the mining contracts, as we know. And so that has been something that has, in some ways, hung over Lundin shares until the mining contract was resolved. But both Inmet and Lundin executives are very firm in saying that Tenke-Fungurume asset is a cornerstone asset for the new company. And then in terms of the Cobre Panama project, Inmet there owns 80% of that asset. They've sold 20% already to a Korean firm. And Inmet had been talking about selling another perhaps 20 to 25% in Cobre Panama just to help the company fund what is expected to be about a $5 billion price tag to construct that mine and the related infrastructure. So now having teamed up with Lundin, it's possible that that the new company may actually retain all that 80% of the stake, 80% of Cobre Panama that it holds. And if it is to sell a stake, maybe bring on another partner, it probably will be at least at a smaller level than they had been talking about before.
And how has this deal been received by the market?
Yeah, in general, analysts seem pretty happy with the transaction. It's they emphasize the sort of the obviousness of it, that the companies are pretty similar both in size and as well as the assets that they own. The shareholders the biggest shareholders of each Inmet and Lundin respectively have both agreed to support the transaction. And then there's also been a concern in Canada over the years in terms of what they call sort of a hollowing out of the sector, the base metal sector. We've seen companies either doing deals with other Canadian firms or else actually being acquired by foreign companies. You can think about the Incos, the Falcon Bridges. And so Inmet and Lundin are sort of talking this transaction up and the new company Centerra as potentially stepping into that gap of that was created by the disappearance of these other companies. And that's certainly something that at least I think investors and analysts in Canada are quite positive about.
Thank you so much, Lizo, for your time. That was Mining Weekly Deputy Editor Lizo, you speaking to me from Toronto, Canada. I'm Martin Joaquin in Johannesburg. Join me again next week for more news and insight on mining in the Americas.